Gatekeeper, open the portals between the gods and mortals. Power freely flows as our magic grows.
Ave Fortuna, hail Fortuna.
Hail Fortuna.
O you who rules over the fortunes of gods and men, O Fortuna. You who hates for any power to grow secure, but who instead ever loves something new to come along, and who spurns what she already possesses. To you now our voices lift in praise, as by this right we may approach you. Fortuna, favor us, and give us fair wind to follow. In you, dearest mother, in your hands do we place our safekeeping. We offer you this wine. Fortuna, honoramus te.
Fortuna, we honor you.
Fortuna, we honor you. Fortuna, hear our prayer and be blessed, for what we give freely in thanks to you. Fortuna, autem nobiscum.
Fortuna, be with us now.
Fortuna, be with us now. Hey, I'm Arin.
And I'm Jonathan.
And you're listening to Part the Mist,
a podcast by a pair of 80th Druids here in Portland, Oregon.
So we have a little bit of a different episode for you today. We just got back from our Beyond the Gates festival. We have several interviews to play for you guys that we're going to be playing actually over the course of several months. For today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how things went. Basically, it's going to be one of our recap episodes, but a little bit more in-depth, since we had 4 days to talk about, instead of just, a couple of hours. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize right now. This is the first time we have, I have a little bit of a cold, but I will do my best to maintain awesome speakability.
All right, so Arin was nice enough to go ahead and create some talking points for us. So Arin, what did you like best about Beyond the Gates?
Beyond the Gates was actually my very first pagan festival, just to get that out there, out the gates. I think I probably mentioned in one or two of the interviews that I do, but, so for me, I gotta say my favorite part was getting to meet, some big names within ADF. We got to meet Reverend Missy and Reverend William, and we also got to meet Phaedra Bonewits, which, if you guys have been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I've gotten to grow a little bit obsessed with Isaac Bonewits throughout the course of the podcast, just doing the research that I had to do for the podcast, reading his book, The Essential Guide to Druidism. So getting to meet Phaedra Bonewits and getting to talk to her some about Isaac and just talking to her about, the things that she's done throughout the year was a really unique and happy experience for me. So what did you like best?
All right, this might be a little biased, but it's not so much of the fact that I put on this ritual is seeing how much people enjoyed this ritual. So I put on a Fortuna ritual. This is a reconstructed ritual that dates back to about 180 BCE. Now, the words probably came before then, but we have a definite date to this ritual, so we know that, yes, it's probably older, but we can know definitely it's at this date. And the idea that we're honoring the old contracts that were made to Fortuna in a very straightforward, no fluff, kind of, instead of beating, I know some rituals, even I'm guilty of this, kind of beat around the bush. Mm-hmm. It's just pretty much a direct, we call to you, Fortuna, we watch your blessings, we offer this to you, let us have a shared meal, let us process to meet you. It was a really, really well, I know you, Arin, were helping with me. It was a really well done ritual that was really received well with the community.
Yes.
And most likely I'll probably put that on again at the next Beyond the Gates.
Yeah.
It was funny because it was Reverend Kirk Thomas posted a picture of me doing that ritual on his Facebook, and Heather Green of the Wild Hunt picked that up and wanted an article written about the Fortuna ritual. So we were featured in the Wild Hunt newsfeed.
And if you're interested in seeing that, I can definitely post a link in the show notes to that blog post, because it is a blog. It's a blog.
It's a news blog.
It's a news blog. But yeah, I really enjoyed that ritual. I felt like I was really connecting with the ancestors, with the Roman ancestors, but just with our ancestors in general, by having this opportunity to speak these words, these exact same words that had been spoken over 2,000 years ago. I, for one, am very enthusiastic about doing more Roman rituals or more Fortuna rituals in the future, and that's something that Jonathan and I discussed a little bit afterwards.
We were going to record that ritual, but unfortunately it started raining. So it started raining right before the ritual started, but when we started making offerings to Fortuna, the rain stopped and the sky opened up. So that was a good sign, but at the same time, that probably would have destroyed my my laptop.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it was actually raining most of the time that we were at the Beyond the Gates
Yes.
festival, which I mean, it was a gentle rain. It was pretty nice, modest rain most of the time. So I didn't hear any complaints about it. But
the thing is, it was a light mist, and most of our stuff, most of our workshops were upstairs.
mm-hmm.
So upstairs inside, so
Right.
it didn't really affect anybody, and it was really light. Yeah, but going back to what you're saying about the same words for those for those who might be interested out there, the Romans, when they did their festivals and their rituals, think of it as like renewing contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So the hedge of their bets, they're reading the exact same words that their fathers did, their grandfathers did, going back and back, because hey, if these original words worked to get the blessings of the gods, we'll use the same ones again and again and again. So
and this was not, for clarification purposes, this was not an ADF ritual. This was an actual Roman ritual with some tweaks and modifications for a modern action back to what the Romans would have been doing.
Yes. So what did you like least about these? Because this is always a terrible one. It's like you put on these events and you're like, there's self-control. It's kind of a self-evaluation because you and I and David and all the other Grove members, we don't want to shortchange anybody here. But it's a first-year event, so things that we obviously could see that we could do better next year. So what about you?
Right. So that's kind of a trick. Probably what I liked least about it personally was the fact that I was doing so much running around. We didn't have like an official staff. We were the official staff. So everything about this event, everything about the festival, what I'm looking forward to is getting to go from an attendee's perspective and not from the perspective of having to organize.
Hey everybody, Jonathan here. Seems like we've had some technical difficulties with recording our review of Beyond the Gates, words being dropped from the recordings for some unknown reasons. So instead, please enjoy some of the other Grove members' accounts of Beyond the Gates, as well as some music, as well as an interview with Phaedra Bonewits.
Beyond the Gates was kind of a bit remarkable for me. First off, I got to meet Phaedra Bonewits, which I thought was going to be a kind of somewhat of a fangirl moment for me, but it ended up being really casual, and I got to meet her during her workshop where she presented on ritual participation skills. I learned a lot from that workshop and immediately realized that, well, she's a real person and a real sweetheart at that, so we actually spent a good portion of the weekend just chatting, and that was really great. That workshop, actually, I took a lot away from because I think of our Columbia Grove festival, or not festivals, but our rituals as a presenter, as a Grove member. But to think about them from the perspective of a guest, that definitely helped me understand a little bit more from their perspective, and also how to be a good guest at other pagan events as well. So that was actually really, really great workshop for myself. In fact, actually all of the workshops that were presented at Beyond the Gates were quite impactful for me. Another one being William's workshop on the fourth kindred, the being humanity. That workshop actually had a very deep impact on me in that we did an exercise on the privilege you were born with, where we all started on the same line and the same, where we see each other now, which is, equals. And as questions were asked about, your privilege and your life experiences, you were encouraged to take a step forward if you'd experienced something, or a step back if you had experienced something. And by the end of this exercise, we had people that had stepped clear to the beginning of the room, up and pressed up against the wall, and then we had several members that were at the very back of the room. And it was this amazingly visual representation of the difference of privilege that, just the people that were there have experienced in their lives. And I gotta say, I was deeply emotionally affected by this because it was eye-opening. And a really great message to understand, our average, ritual attendees or the pagans that we work with and live around on a constant basis, they're all from a different background. They're all serving the same purpose or working in the same direction, but we all have a different level of privilege we were born to, and how can we use that or strive for the ability to help others. Like I said, it was tremendously impactful. I absolutely loved Kirk's workshop on Celtic history. A lot of things I was already familiar with, and there was some things that were actually new, but the workshop itself was incredibly well structured, and I really, really enjoy everything that, Kirk presents, because he does it in such a happy manner that you're excited to learn all of this wealth of historical information, which is right up my alley. I really enjoyed the Fortuna ritual. I've never taken part in any kind of a Roman ritual that wasn't specifically ADF, so that was really cool. We had one of our members, Arin, who translated the entire script in Latin, and that was really incredible because, A, I didn't know that Arin could actually speak Latin, but B, it gave that whole different element to this ancient, historically accurate ritual that we had, in which we had the words spoken and then the words in Latin as well. So that was really cool and really great to be part of. I think one of the best things for me the entire weekend, though, has got to be the Bardic Nights. All of the fun songs, all of just the happy, high energy, everybody, all ages, all paths, religious paths, all levels of talent. We had singers, we had storytellers, we had jokesters, we had all of the above, and it was just this huge burst of energy at the end of every night, and it was just tremendously heartwarming for myself. I got to sing in front of people, and that was fun. I got to learn so many new songs from Missy, and I am abundantly grateful for the opportunity to learn from her and sing these new songs with our Bardic group, because I know that we're certainly inspired to add these to our singing repertoire. But overall, I would definitely say that Beyond the Gates was a fantastic experience for me. I just learned a ton, met a whole bunch of new faces, and strengthened my relationships with my own Grove members. So I gotta say, it was really great, and I'm seriously looking forward to next year as well.
This is Mama Gaea, Festival Director of Beyond the Gates. This was an inaugural event for Columbia Grove ADF, and I think it was a resounding success. We had 35 attendees, 2 vendors, beautiful weather for the most part. We only had a little bit of vacillation with a little bit of rain here, a little bit of sun there, a little bit of clouds. But it was wonderful and comfortable, and people had an amazing experience. I personally remember during the Unity Ritual on Saturday night, it was the most powerful experience I have ever had. Phaedra Bonewits gave the ancestor invocation, and it gave me chills, and I had a very powerful UPG. Now, what I thought was most successful was the ability for the attendees to bond with one another, to make those close new relationships in a short period of time. Our presenters gave some very powerful topics and speeches and presentations, and I heard from more than a few people that it touched them deeply and transformed their lives. What I thought was least successful, we could have organized the schedule a little bit better, which we are definitely going to do. We are going to make sure and ask more people ahead of time what their food preferences are, to make sure that we can accommodate everyone who needs to attend. We will just hone things, because as a first-year event, I actually think it went really well. We only had a couple of small hiccups, easily dealt with, and everyone felt like it went swimmingly. What I would like to see improve for next year, I just want to get the word out more. I want to include children's activities, at least be able to promote that. We will find places to hold more things. We will have areas for just relaxing. And we will make sure that everybody understands the registration process, how easy it will be to reserve their space, if they want to camp, if they want to stay indoors. I just think it's going to go really well in future years to come.
Hi, Coatney here, newbie member of the Grove. Got my little newbie wheels on. Yeah, I'm a newbie. My experiences with Beyond the Gates. It was awesome, in a word. As the energy was great, a lot of the workshops were awesome. I didn't get all of them, but they were awesome. And it was a great bonding and learning experience, as well as a few other things. I was introduced to a couple of new gods. Dag does the new one. And it was, in a word, awesome!
You can say your prayers, work your rites, burn your little candles day and night. You can shimmy till dawn to the pounding drums, but you best be ready when the horn one comes, yeah. To the sound of a hunting horn, you dance a ring in the gathering storm. If the solstice time gets your panties in a wad, it's just the coming of the horn god. He will call you out, make you sweat, give you a blessing that you'll never forget. So revel in the chase and let your heartbeat run. Blessed are the children of the horned one. Blessed are the children of the horned one. Hey. Hunter who tracks outside of time, guardian lord of ancient rhyme, brother stag in the musky glen, consort of the goddess in her woodland den. We call you forth as we make our way, walking in your power every day. Guide us true in our hunt this night, and maybe even later in the great ride. He will call you out, make you sweat, give you a blessing that you'll never forget. So revel in the chase and let your heartbeat run. Blessed are the children of the horned one. Blessed are the children of the horned one. To the sound of a hunting horn. If you dance a ring in the gathering storm, so revel in the chase and let your heartbeat run. But you best be ready, little one. You best be ready when the horn one wet. Give you a blessing that you'll never forget. So revel in the chase and let your heartbeat run. Blessed are the children of the Horned One. Blessed are the children of the Horned One. Blessed are the children of the Horned One.
The White Mountain Druid Sanctuary at Trout Lake Abbey is a monastery seminary organized following the tradition of Arnriocht Féin, a Druid Fellowship, a worldwide church also known as ADF. Our mission is to promote the public worship of the gods, the earth, our ancestors, and the spirits of the land through classes and workshops, ritual and service, and to provide a place of pilgrimage where pagans of all kinds may find connection to the spirits through worship and reciprocity. The sanctuary is housed at Trout Lake Abbey, a bed and breakfast, retreat center, and organic farm. Located at the sanctuary is a small sanctuary building and numerous shrines to various gods, including the Morrigan, Cernunnos, and the spirits of the land. Trout Lake Abbey and the sanctuary are located at 46 Stoller Road in Trout Lake, Washington. Come and see us. Worship at our shrines. For more information, send an email to druidkirk@gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Phaedra Bonewits, and you're listening to Part the Mist, a Druid podcast created and hosted by the members of Columbia ADF.
Hey folks, I'm here at Beyond the Gates with Phaedra Bonewits. Talked about her before on the podcast, of course, in our What is ADF episode. Talked about her in terms of Isaac Bonewits, but of course we're here to talk to you a little bit on your own merit as well.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So my favorite question to get to understand a little bit more about people is, what brought you to paganism?
Well, like as with many people, it's a long, long story. I think that I was raised Roman Catholic, as was Isaac, interestingly enough. And I think I always had a taste for the little bit of the mystic and exotic side of it. Loved the incense, hello. And I think what really was possibly the turning point for me was when I was 13 years old and a freshman in high school, and we spent the first semester of freshman English with Edith Hamilton's mythology. And I got just sucked right into that. Oh, to this day, the Greek gods and goddesses are very primary for me. But it really took me into a whole new world and something that remained special to me. I still have that book. I still have my high school copy of Edith Hamilton's mythology sitting on my bookshelf because it's that precious to me.
Yes.
It was such an opener. And I think that I didn't really realize that people were doing this stuff for a long time afterwards. I mean, I was always very interested in mythology, very interested in history and ancient civilizations and all that. And then in the mid-70s, I found myself, actually in the early 70s, I found myself in the Susan B. Anthony bookstore in Chicago. And I found a little booklet that was Suzanne Budapest's Book of Lights and Shadows, which was essentially a Gardnerian BOS rewritten with the pronouns changed. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was fascinating. And I started to hear these little ripples about feminist theology and feminist spirituality. And when I was in art school then in like 76, 77, I took a course called Women in Myth, which I figured was right up my alley. And we looked at an awful lot of stuff about ancient cultures and about the goddesses and everything. And I was just absolutely hooked. And I also learned from that there were women who were really seriously doing feminist spirituality and seriously looking at the, our passed as having female deities, and that might not seem a big deal now, but it was pretty cutting edge in the mid-70s. We didn't even have a book that we could use for the class. They weren't written yet. We had she had us read chapters out of this book, or she'd give us a Xerox of this or that. There wasn't even a book to use, and I really clung to that. And then around 79, 80, I stumbled across in quick succession Spiral Dance and Drawing Down the Moon, which of course were published on the same day in 1979, October 31st, 1979.
I did not know that.
Yes. And so I found them probably in the very early 1980 at that point. So, and I was entranced. It was like, holy macaroni, there's people actually doing this. And it just kind of blew me away. I was kind of disappointed. Margot's chapter on Chicago, stuff that was going on in Chicago was very limited and not much to it, so I didn't really know where to search or anything in Chicago. But you have to know that there is an institution in Chicago that's been around since the 1920s under various ownerships called the Occult Bookstore. And
so, are you trying to tell me there was no Google in 1980?
There was no Google. There was no Google. But there was the Occult Bookstore, which I knew about because my dad used to have an office around the corner from them.
Oh, no way.
And it would, at one of their locations, they moved about 5 times since. But my sister and I would be, like the little kids with our nose pressed against the glass. We're 12, 13, 10 years old and looking at the stuff in the window of the Occult Bookstore. And that was kind of large there. My older sister, by the way, grew up to become Swami Hastananda of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, which just shows you this stuff is, you get addicted. I had been going to the Occult Bookstore fairly regularly in the early 70s because I got really into tarot. I like to describe tarot as my gateway drug. That was my entrance really into metaphysical stuff. My sister got involved with the Temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago. But I wasn't, she was very willing to embrace the guru model, but that didn't feel right to me. So I was kind of holding myself separate, and I really had a religious hunger. I remember at one point in the mid-70s wondering if I should go back to the Catholic Church, and then I kind of looked at, all the reasons that I hadn't been going, and the way women were treated was a big one. And I says, no, I could not in good conscience go back to that, even though I had that hunger. So I was very open. I was very willing to find things. So after reading Drawing Down the Moon, I got pretty excited. And the Spiral Dance fit right into all the stuff that I'd been picking up over the years about feminine spirituality. So, at the Occult Bookstore, all of a sudden I'm looking at stuff besides the tarot books and magazines and everything. And in a city that had a huge pagan population and temples going back to the late 1960s and all that stuff, I couldn't find anybody. I had a friend that was into every kind of, New Age occult thing and everything, and I asked her, I said, what about witches? You know any witches? No, I don't know that. I said, it was ridiculous. I could not find anybody. I would open the newspaper and see a big feature article about a winter solstice ritual that had been done the day before, and it was just kind of silly. It's like, how can I not find these people? And then eventually in 1986, almost exactly 30 years ago. God, it probably
that was the year before I was born. Actually,
yeah, it would have been 30 years ago, like in April.
Oh wow!
I saw an ad in the Chicago Reader when there used to be free newspapers with lots of classifieds in them that said there was going to be this lecture about goddesses, and I thought, oh, cool. And I went there and. One woman read an academic paper about goddesses, which was actually kind of boring, and I almost fell asleep. But on the other hand, it was like, wow, they're actually coming at this from a scholarly, this isn't flaky. This is like a scholarly, serious historical perspective. And the other priestess talked about it more on a very personal level, and what it meant to her. As it happens, the one with the scholarly paper turned out to be wound up being my first magical teacher, and the one who did the more emotional one wound up being the I joined her working circle, and she was the one who initiated me.
Oh, wow.
So, I met them all, everybody at the same time. But they announced that there was a group then in Chicago called the Heartland Pagan Association, which is not the same one that does that festival. It was entirely separate. And that they were going to be holding the new moon experimental liturgy rituals, because doing a public ritual was at that time for, maybe Yule they do it or something, but to do moon rituals was a very radical idea. And they were going to be doing that first one in a couple of weeks, and they invited everybody to come. So I went to that, and I felt it. I just felt the energy. I felt it, and I was hooked. So, 2 months later, they asked me if I wanted to be on the committee, of course. And, within 2 months after that, I'm leading rituals, hardly knowing what I'm doing, but what the hell, I had teachers wanting to do this, okay.
Sometimes the best way to learn to do a thing is to be thrown into the deep end.
Yes. And I got a kind of that from both of my teachers. Funny thing is that first magical teacher that I had, who was part of the New Moon group, she had this requirement that if you were going to do any kind of classes or any kind of serious follow-up with her, that required reading was the first 4 chapters of this book called Real Magic by this guy named Isaac Bonewits. And I thought that book was really cool. I thought it was pretty wonderful. I love the humor. I love the way I was like, this is just too cool for words. But anyway. So I got involved with this group, and I just did a lot of public work first, probably for almost a year before I ever did any private circles. And then in Beltane of '87, I got formally initiated into a kind of a unique to Chicago line, and there's been no stopping me since. I remember once I had done had one of the larger roles in some Panthea was the group that our committee evolved into. Panthea was a public pagan church. For a while we had a storefront. We were a pagan storefront for a church. And I did some Panthea ritual, and someone came up to me, a young woman, and said, wow, I hope someday I can be as good at this as that you are. And I'm thinking to myself, I have been doing this for 8 months. And I said, well, it might happen sooner than you think. But I really felt like I found my art form with ritual. It made perfect sense to me. It worked for me. So, from then it was kind of never look back. I worked with them for a while. I wound up for various marriages and stuff, moving in different parts of the country. But I've always, kept up with pagan community. Being publicly pagan and doing public stuff has always been very important to me. Because I feel that some people are well suited to being clergy, well suited to or doing the mystery religion end of it. And some people just want to show up on the holidays and worship the gods. And that's fine too. And there should be somewhere for them to do that.
Yes.
So that's kind of also how I met Isaac. One of my friends from that original circle I was with in Chicago, and we got a flyer for Starwood Festival in Ohio, and said, and the guest speakers were going to be Isaac Bonewits and then Otter Griselle. And we were like, this is too cool, So it's like, well, it's not that far. We could drive there, So we went to this festival, and I met Isaac at the first workshop that he did, and we attended it. It was on doing public ritual. And it's like, okay, so here we are. We're on the same. This is important to both of us, And we started a friendship there that lasted for 14 years until we moved in together. But it is always important to me of the art form of ritual. It's always been important to me to know the history behind things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things my teachers told me, and for the research I found out, well, that's not quite how it was. You know,
Yeah.
oh no, this prayer really wasn't an ancient Hermetic prayer. It was Gardner wrote it.
Yeah.
Little things like that. You know, as I like to tell my students, I said, ancient tradition is whatever the high priestess learned 2 weeks before you joined the circle. Because as far as you know, it's always been like that.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And my hyper analytical self loves to find out the history and find out, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been part of my work now. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 30 years.
So I can see how that would mesh with what Isaac was doing with ADF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because I never really considered myself that druidy.
Mm-hmm.
My initial connection with Isaac, I think, was more on the magic front.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of public liturgy,
Mm-hmm.
of how to do that, do it well,
Mm-hmm.
do it, in a way that works for the people who are going to attend it, that we had very much in common.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very much in common.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny. A lot of people think that I'm a lot more of a druid than I am.
Uh-huh.
They'll say, we want you to come to this event and do a druid ritual. And I said, no, we don't.
Well, you were married to
Isaac
Bonewits.
Bonewits,
Shouldn't
yeah.
you be Jewish? Yeah.
I probably did. I could probably count on my fingers the number of times we did a druid ritual together. On fingers of one hand. It's just, a lot of it was because in the years that most of the years we knew each other, we were living in separate states.
Mm-hmm.
And the years when we were cohabitating, basically, I had the straight job, so he could do his thing.
Yeah.
I supported him because what he was doing was important.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when he would go off to events and stuff to do rituals, because of the job I had, I couldn't travel.
Mm-hmm.
I always had to work on the long holiday weekends and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's our life together was more private
Mm-hmm.
than it was public in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But we did manage to, write a book together and do some things locally. We were living in the suburbs of New York City, and we did things locally, and, some things I was able to do with him, and it was a privilege. It was always, we had some really different styles. He liked to write scripts and memorize things, and I can't memorize things for beans. I like to say that I did the commedia dell'arte style of ritual, which meant I know I have to get from point A to point B to then point C, but how you get there may change every time. Just as long as I arrive at those points so other people can know when to come in, it's fine. He was much more, we're going to work off the script, darn it. But we figured it out. We figured it out.
Can you tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, your personal practice, your personal brand of paganism?
My personal paganism, I've really been kind of, in the last years, really kind of like thinking about what that all meant. Celtic deities were never really my thing. That was Isaac's thing. I didn't know even that much about them except what I picked up from him. I really have looked at more Mediterranean basin. I love the Greeks, yes, the Romans, but also Sumerian, like Inanna. I've done a lot of work around the Inanna Ereshkigal work, and also Egyptian stuff. When I was a little tiny girl, I read a book about a little girl's life in ancient Egypt, and that, again, I was hooked. So that has appealed to me. Isis, and I have, due to work that I was doing 30 years ago, I have a real strong connection with Sekhmet. So I find that I'm kind of going back and looking at more of those. I spent a lot of my adulthood with my patron being Aphrodite. But at the age I'm now, I'm 64, she hasn't felt like a fit with me for a long time. It's not that we don't have affection for each other, but it's not the same thing as when you're 30 and 40, believe me. And it's taken me a while to work through that, and I have found that I'm now going back more to Sekhmet, to this who is in her own way a sexuality being, but, this fierceness and this warriorness and this power, feels to me like where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of rituals and stuff that I do are more, in a kind of a contemporary Wiccan format. I do cast circles, call quarters, do that stuff. Because of the line that I came out of in Chicago, there's a fair amount of more ceremonial stuff thrown into that. I had been known to call the quarters as the angels of the quarters in Enochian, but it doesn't work for everybody to do that. But that's what we used to do. So I tend to be a little high church that way. Mm-hmm. And my feeling is because, if you got something that works, you learn to do it real well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my natural ritual home, to be in that format. Mm-hmm. But I'm always, looking at different ways to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I really love and admire ADF ritual work, because I don't think I've ever been to a bad ADF ritual. I'm sure there are some out there. I'm sure there are. Uh-huh. But the ones that I've been to have all been just really great experiences.
Well, that's because they're sitting there going, well, this is Phaedra Bonewits. We have to be the best druids.
Maybe. And some of them I went to with Isaac, so it was probably like, oh boy, we gotta be on our toes.
Best behavior.
Yeah. But the point is that he had the same kind of analytic background too. Mm-hmm. So he came up with a ritual format, based on Indo-European models. Mm-hmm. And it got worked on and refined, and the reason they're still doing it, more or less the way he did it, is because it works. I'm a real practical person now. I'm a pragmatic pagan. If it works, that's good. If it doesn't work, why are you doing it?
And in my experience, continues to be worked on. It continues to be refined as our world changes around us.
That's right. And it really things.
And it's a fantastic model for that kind of fluidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I've really been working on, since I work possibly a little bit more in a Wiccan context than, I've never called myself Wiccan though. Mm-hmm. I just need to clarify that. I use Wiccan because then people know what I'm talking about, because I won't call it and stuff. But I called myself always a magician or a witch. Okay. But the thing that I've really been looking at in my personal practice, in the last year, I've taken on students, which I haven't done in a lot of years. And I find that one of the things that's been hard for me to just fall back into the old patterns with is a binary gender, the deity. Your classic Wiccan circles, the high priest calls the god and the high priestess calls the goddess. And, it's always that binary. And all of a sudden I'm looking at that and I'm saying, this doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't. I was reading through all my old lecture notes from the 90s from my old students that I was going to give to my new students, and it's got so much binary gender in it. And it's like, I don't feel it's a responsible thing to do to say this is what it is, because the world has changed.
Yes.
Our understanding of these things has changed.
It's actually almost as a member of the trans community, I see a lot of commentary out there. I was never able to stick too closely to a Wiccan model because of that reason, and I've seen a lot of people make commentary about how it's almost toxic.
It does put you. I don't think the gods are that absolute. And, this is a lot of experience and a lot of looking at this. And I'm thinking that I understand why Gerald set it up the way he set it up. Mm-hmm. And I can kind of see where it was all coming through. And this is the 21st century. And my personal understanding of gender, and that has, in the last 10 years, has just changed tremendously. Mm-hmm. A lot of things that I assumed I knew or judgments that I had or things. I'll admit it, I wasn't always the perfect person. I'm not perfect now. But I've come to an understanding. It was like, maybe there is stuff beyond your experience and beyond your personal experience that you need to look at and hear. Mm-hmm. And after I did that, then looking at my old notes on, what are the gods? It's like, no, it isn't. It's not male and female. It's not. There's all those blurry lines, and it's it's the gods. It's not about...
It's deity.
Yes, you don't have to have a lady god and a guy god.
Yes.
You know? And there's plenty of examples of cross-gender gods anyway.
Yeah, yes.
So what I've been working with my private students is saying, if you're choosing deity for the rite, don't worry about getting a match pair. Whatever that means. But worry about finding deity that is appropriate to the work that you're going to do in the ritual. And whether that's one god or 10 goddesses or whatever, or something that's ambivalent or in between, as long as the work you are doing is an appropriately in the scope of influence for that deity, that's why you pick the deity. And I've stopped worrying about the, light one candle for the god and one light candle for the god. It just stopped making sense for me.
That for me is a very heartwarming thing to hear from someone who is a pagan elder.
We can be taught. And I know it's hard. I mean, I hear stories about the other elders, and I know it's a struggle, and I can kind of feel for them. And who am I serving? Who am I serving if I can't? If the community is telling me, no, this isn't what the world is like anymore, how am I serving them by saying, you're wrong? No, it's got to be just the way it was when that too doesn't make sense to me. And maybe that's because I always came from a public paganism thing. I always came from the idea this is a service to the community. So if you're doing something that disserves the community, it stops making sense.
Oh boy, I could talk for hours on this subject alone. We're coming up on the end of our time though. So is there anything else that you would like our listeners to know, that you'd like us to know? Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. It's like everything can be made better through practice and understanding. And whatever ritual structures that you choose them because it makes sense in the context, not just because you think it's supposed to do. And if you're not sure why something's done a certain way, find out before you change it. Have a solid foundation. When I was in art school, they used to tell us you have to learn the rules before you break them. You could become great when you break the rules, but only if you knew what they were to begin with.
Yes.
And I think that that's with ritual practice, and I like I said, ritual is my art form. I think that's very, very important to know. I'm always happy to talk at great length about it.
Well, I hope we can have you on the podcast again sometime.
That would be fun.
And thank you so much for coming up and sharing a little bit of your background and your wisdom with us.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. It really means a lot.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
And welcome back. We are here with the upcoming events for August and September 2016. We have on August 7th is the Columbia ADF Lunasa ritual starting at 3:30 p.m. That's going to be at our usual location, the West Hills Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. August 25th through 28th is going to be Cascadia Fire. It's said to be 3 days of community and 3 nights of fire circle ceremony. Registration is open and active, and it's located at, I hope I pronounce this right, Skookumchuck River, which is west of Centralia, Washington. On August 26th is the Columbia ADF Druid Drinks at 2 p.m., located at the Lucky Labrador in Portland, Oregon. And on August 27th, beginning at 10 a.m., is the Eugene Pagan Pride at the Alton Baker Park. And I believe this is their first Pagan Pride, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in September, we have from September 2nd through 5th, Fairy Worlds 2016. That's located at Horning's Hideout in Oregon. And their website is fairyworlds.com, which will be in the show notes. September 18th at 10 a.m. is the Columbia Willamette Pagan Pride, which is located at the Oaks Amusement Park.
And Columbia will be there with a booth, and also we are doing the 32. Columbia will be there, and we will be hosting the Harvest main ritual for the event.
Yes, and we'll have our own booth as well. And finally, on September 24th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the Celtic Fair Portland, and that's located at Chute Park, and their website is CelticFairPDX.com, fair with an E, also in the show notes. So that's it for us today. Sorry for the brisk conclusion to our calendar here, but we know you've heard a lot from us today. So, let's go ahead and give our thanks to Fortuna and close out. So, Fortuna, for another successful podcast and wonderful community, we thank you.
We thank you. All right. Hope you guys stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to start going over our hearth cultures.
Yes, we will. And a bonus episode on Lunasa coming up later in August. And we'll see you later, folks.
Mother, help me. Mother, heal me. Please release me from all things worldly that do not serve me. Mother, love me. Mother, help me. Mother, heal me. Please release me from all things worldly that do not serve me. Mother, love me. Within these stones, I feel the power. Please release me as I break from all these chains that bind. And now I'm floating light as a feather. As I break these chains that bind, I'm gonna heal me. Please release me. Bind, I'm gonna break that do not these chains that bind. I'm gonna break these chains that bind. I'm gonna break these chains that bind. I'm gonna release me from all these chains that bind. I'm gonna break me. These chains that bind. I'm gonna break. Mother, these chains that bind. Yes, I will break. These chains that bind. I'm gonna break that do not. These chains that bind. I'm gonna break. Mother, these chains that bind. I'm gonna break. Mother, these chains that bind. Yes, I will. Please release me. Chains that bind. Oh, blessed Mother, you empower me. Yes, you have shown me just how to set myself free. And now I'm soaring up in the clear blue sky as I break these chains that bind. I'm gonna break these chains that bind. I'm gonna break these chains that bind. I'm gonna break from all these chains that bind. Yes, I will break these chains that bind. I'm gonna break these chains I will break these chains that bind. Now I have broken these chains that bind. Yes, I have broken from all these chains that bind. Yes, I have broken these chains that bind. Yes, I did break these chains that bind. Mother, heal me. Please release me from all things worldly that do not serve me. Mother, love me. Mother, help me. Mother, heal me. Please release me from all things worldly that do not serve me. Mother, love me.